Okay, we're going to go over the 3 stages of gang stalking. The first stage is the confusion stage, the distraction stage, the sensitization stage. I break it down into 4 basic elements: audio, visual, covert drugging, and electronic weapons. Audio is natural and non-natural noise. So you can have a noise campaign right outside your home. Different neighbors slamming doors on cue, going outside yelling, making a lot of ruckus. And it's strategically networked. These aren't people just doing it, just randomly doing it, picking on you. It's networked to them. Emails, text messages, phone calls. They may have some sort of group meeting where they're going to decide, how they're going to present these noise campaigns to you. And so throughout the day, these noise campaigns happen. And so, and then money is exchanging hands. So this isn't a bunch of people picking on somebody like some people call gang stalking adult bullying. This is a finance network, a series of networked events. It can go on not just in a neighborhood setting, it can go on at a workplace. It can go on outside your church. It can go on anywhere you go. Something such as a noise campaign will follow you throughout gang stalking. So I broke that down into 2, natural and non-natural. So yelling, loud noise, slamming doors, even up to construction work. People purposely cutting on lawnmowers at certain times, snow blowers at certain times, what have you not. Now, the non-natural is, say, this is being played from something like a stereo. So you may have a car purposely drive by you at certain points playing loud stereo music on cue. So these are noise campaigns. Okay, now the visual, I broke it down into people and objects. So individuals, you can see these individuals and they participate in what you know as gang stalking, and they're following you most often using the color coding, the color coding strategy. Some people call it color harassment, where they follow you around wearing red and black, red and black, red and black, or white and black, or it can be any other color. It doesn't really have to be one color in particular. It can be multiple different colors used strategically in unison. So if you walk to the store, you may notice a whole network of people following you throughout that period of time wearing the same colors. So then you say, okay, this is visual, I can see this. Objects are used as well. So you can be living in a neighborhood and certain neighbors may purposely on cue put certain bicycles just because they have a certain color to them, or people will use certain color cars. The car that somebody drives may actually change to fit in with the gang stalking. That's how serious it is. That's how well networked it is. So again, that's color coding people and objects. And this isn't just this could be at your workplace, areas of recreation. If you show up at the park, individuals will show up. I've seen people do silly things, just like throwing balls to each other, like a red ball, just throwing the balls to each other. That's just something they do. That's just something that happens in gang stalking. So there you go, audio, visual, and then these things are mixed together as well. So when you're being gang stalked, you have people wearing these red shirts that they may be driving past you playing music at certain times on cue. So the audio and the visual goes hand in hand. It's not just you will experience only a series of noise campaigns and then visual, a visual campaign. These things are intermixed. Then you have electronic weapons, which are used. Now, electronic weapons can vary. These can be weapons like electronic pulse guns, radiation weapons. These originally were designed to be war weapons, but people can use them in conventional warfare. So you can be living in a home, somebody living next to you could be using this weapon on you. You can be at the workplace, somebody next to you in the office next to you can be using this weapon on you. You can be out and about in the streets, and somebody can be using these weapons on you. Then you have electronic weapons when it comes into the sense to be like HARP technology, radiated weapons, and that's a little bit more difficult for me to explain. I'm not the one to get into that because I don't know that much about it. I just deal with gang stalking mainly at a street level as far as education I have that is available on it. So audio, visual, covert drugging, electronic weapons. Now, I want to keep in mind for people who've never heard of gang stalking, it goes deeper than just colors and noise. When people are being gang stalked, there's a certain sort of feeling that comes with it. When you show up at a certain place and you have individuals following you around wearing colors and creating noise, a lot of times individuals will do all sorts of extra things. They will look at you in certain ways. It'll be a hostile type of feeling. So if you're hanging out at an area and you're being enclosed by these individuals, that produces a certain vibration. That produces, in most people, it may bring out anger, it may bring out fear, it may bring out uncertainty. So what you're seeing happen to the individual and what is actually happening and what the individual is experiencing is two different things. It's two different things. I tell people it's 50 to 100 times worse than what you can imagine. To watch somebody get followed by people wearing red shirts and noise campaigns is one thing. To actually be the person going through it is a completely different thing. Because you're taking on the energy of all these different people, all these different personalities, focusing on you. And to live like that day to day to day to day is way different than anything you can ever imagine. It's completely different than what you can imagine. So, audio, visual, covert drugging, electronic weapons. Now, the first stage, the confusion stage, you're not meant to know you're being gang stalked. You have no idea you're being gang stalked. And the people who are gang stalking you have analyzed you to a certain degree where they've done a psychological profile or they assessed what they would assume to bother you or assume to be a fear. It may not be. They're just assuming, they're trying to mess with you. So you wake up one day and you go out into the world and you're going to see all these strange things and all these strange people, and you're going to deal with a lot of strange strategies being put against you, and you're not going to know what it is. No one's ever going to, you're not going to get an official letter in the mail. You're not going to get an official phone call. Like that movie, The Game, with Michael Douglas, where he signs up at the corporation, and then the corporation tells him, you're not accepted, but he still is accepted, and all this stuff. It's just like that, except there is no corporate. You never went to anybody. It just starts happening to you. And so the average person, it becomes, panicked, alarmed. People go into psychotic shock. People kill themselves. People get guns and go out and start shooting people because it's too much to deal with. You're dealing with multiple different angles of psychological harassment and physical. This is in the physical world. And so the average mind cannot, the average mind just can't deal with it. It can't function with it. It's something that, unless you've experienced it, you never thought was possible or never believed something like this was possible. The average person has never heard of this before it happens. So, okay, the confusion stage. Now, that may last for a long period of time until somebody comes to you and starts explaining to you what is happening, or until you start processing it yourself and seeing, wait a minute, okay, these people are following me, they're trying to scare me, they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that, or you go on the internet. Now, in today's world, we're in the digital age where people go on the internet and they start typing down these things, gaslighting, being followed by cars with their brights on 24/7. That goes into visual, the visual aspect of gang stalking, right? So people start typing these things into Google, and Google starts bringing these searches back to them and showing them, hey, what you're seeing is identified as gang stalking. So at this point, the person is still in what I like to call the confusion stage, but they're starting to recognize that this is happening to other people. There's thousands of people online that are going through this. But now they come to a new dilemma to where they're told they're delusional or paranoid. So if they go to family and friends and other people out there, they're going to be told that, hey, what you're experiencing, you're not really experiencing. Guess what? You just went through all that hell figuring out what was happening to you, and now you know what it is, but guess what? It's not real. You imagined everything. So the people going through it, they get to the confusion stage, they're just like, what is going on? I woke up one day, all this stuff is happening to me. I've spoken to people. One woman, she ran around for 3 days knocking on doors because she didn't know what was going on. She was out of her mind. She ran around for 3 days knocking on random people's doors looking for help. She called the cops. The cops basically laughed at her. And so she just went knocking on random doors for 3 days straight, just out of her mind because she didn't understand what was happening. And she ended up in a psychiatric ward. That's how bad it really is. So now after she went through all that and she realized she was being gang stalked, now her friends and her family, eventually her friends and her family came to believe her. They came to accept her circumstance, but it took them a long time to get through what she was trying to communicate to them. But people would tell her, hey, you're making this up, you're delusional, it's not real, it's not real. That's the confusion stage of it, and that's what you got to expect from other people who are perceiving what you're going through. Now, that's their denial. That's their denial. Either they have no education on the subject, they're part of it to some degree, or they just have a denial. There's something that won't allow them to accept this reality. So, for me, I started getting gang stalked in the summer of 2015. I went through it for a year. And the beginning of it was hell. It was a horrible experience. It was one of the most horrible things. It was one of the most horrible things that I've ever have to come across when I dealt with it, because I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know I was being gang stalked, and the gang stalking network was using all sorts of things against me that it was a real tripped out experience. It really was. So after that year, I just started approaching the gang stalkers. I got tired of walking into stores and having this feeling of having people all over me, the people working there. I got tired of watching random people, homeless people, to people working at fast food restaurants, to people who looked like they had good jobs. All these people participating. I just got tired. I just said, I'm not doing it anymore. So I just started approaching the people, and I just started telling them basically what was happening, what gang stalking was, and what was going on. And some of the times they opened up and actually told me about their participation in it. Now, this was the spring, so this is a little bit less than a year, almost a year. And then in the summer of June of 2016, I first started coming out of my courses called my Beat Gang Stalking courses, where I basically just interviewed. At that time, I didn't call it courses. I just came out and told people, hey, all you got to do is walk up to the people gang stalking you and start talking to them. You can beat gang stalking, yada, yada, yada. And people reported back to me, it worked. A level of fear and a level of isolation has been cut off. I'm not afraid to leave my house anymore, or I don't want to commit suicide anymore, or I don't feel like this is an uncontrollable situation. You describing your tactics have given me a sense of power in my own life, so I don't feel as helpless and vulnerable anymore. And I said, okay, that's great. So I did a series of interviews, talked to people all over. I had people contacting me, asking me, like, tell us more about these strategies, yada, yada, yada. I came up with something called the Genie Effect, which is where, the gang stalking network will use a theme or a tactic, I don't know what to call it. They mimic you, where if you have a favorite coat, hey, they might find other people to participate in the gang stalking and have them wear the same kind of coat and follow you around. So they're mirroring you, they're mimicking you, and they do this on a lot of different levels in a lot of different ways. I started explaining to people you can alter this effect, you can alter the mimic effect, and basically project new information out, whether it be things you're talking about. I had a YouTube channel, so I talked about a lot of different stuff on there. They would start mimicking back to me what I was speaking about. And I was like, man, this is wonderful. You mean I can actually change the structure of the way the gang stalking program works? Now the networking of it has changed. They're using different people based on what I'm saying. They're using people to fit. Like, I started talking about different sorts of different sorts of women. I started talking about different sorts of people that I know, and they would start mimicking it back to me. One time I remember talking about Wall Street. They started mimicking people looking like they were from Wall Street. I was like, this is crazy, right? And so around late August of 2016, I ended up meeting a woman that I ended up dating for a couple months, and she turned out to be a really positive asset to me. At the time, I didn't really know how gang stalking was being networked. I looked at it more like these were like cults that just were trained heavily on what to do. And I'm sure in some cases that's what it is. It's people in contracts and people in cults who have all sorts of other interest in the gang stalking, or they're connected to it in a different sort of way. But for the average person walking on the street who's homeless, or for the average person who really, has no background or no necessary need to be involved in something as some sort of hidden religious organization, I thought, why would they be participating in this? It sort of mystified me, right? And so I started watching this woman I was dating, and she didn't know what gang stalking was. She started hanging around me, and she said, what's going on? Now that I'm around you, I'm getting all sorts of strange phone calls. I was getting strange Facebook contacts from people and stuff, and I don't understand what's happening. It only came around when you came around, and it dawned on me that something was happening because she was around me and I was being gang stalked. So at some point, people started approaching her. People approached her in person, literally, and she told me about it. Like, man, these people were talking trash about you behind your back, trying to get me to do all this different stuff. Then she was getting PayPal money, Walmart cards. She was getting financed to participate in the gang stalking. And I would watch her literally on her phone. She had a smartphone, and this is how it worked. Throughout the day, for part of the day, we would not be with each other physically. And I would be out walking around, going on these long walks, walking around, learning about gang stalking, teaching people about gang stalking, right? Handling my own affairs. And routinely, she would drive by me in a car. Usually not her own car, usually somebody else's car. And she would drive by me in the car, and she would be wearing a red t-shirt, right? And then at one point, I remember in a YouTube video, I told her her hair, she had red hair, I told her hair was turning orange. So then the gang stalking network started mimicking people with, then she started wearing orange shirts. And so that was interesting, right? The mimic effect went from red to orange, so now she's wearing orange shirts. And at that point in time, she would just follow me periodically. Now, gang stalking works very psychologically. It's more than just people, and she didn't have a driver's license. She didn't even have a license plate on her car, but she was still participating in the gang stalking. And the way gang stalking works, it's very psychological. So they wanted to create a scenario where it was like she was around other guys and not talk. So they would have other guys set up the gang stalking, so other guys would follow her or put her in a car. But then she would always come back over to my house, and we would talk about it. And she showed me on her Google Map phone how throughout the day she would get these periodic assignments, and it would be little dots on the modified Google map, and she would know where to drive to follow me. Then when I was with her, she would be going to stores, gas stations, and she would show me on her phone. She would stay at my house, wake up, people would be contacting through Facebook Messenger, asking her to put on red and black clothes. And I'd be like, wait a minute, you're just sleeping in my bed. Now you got to wear a red shirt to participate in the gang stalking with me? What's up with that, right? But she would be doing it, and she'd be getting paid. And that's when I realized how gang stalking is networked, and no one came to her